Okay, here's that chassis for that ZENITH 7S682. There's the schematic for it. I always print a large schematic and I paste it up on the wall. It makes my wife cringe. And of course I have the alignment instructions and all that. It's all very helpful when I'm going through the radio. Anyhow, this is the chassis for it. Chassis, I don't know, it's got some dust, a little bit of corrosion, nothing terrible, nothing that can't be squared away. It should be a good performing radio. I mean, it's you know, it's typical Zenith, you know, with a nice RF stage before the converter and you know, pretty well made. It's one of the last of the black dial Zeniths. I really like black dial Zeniths. I think everyone does. And it has a wave magnet. This is what Zenith called the shielded wave magnet. So there you go. It's a smaller wave magnet than what we saw in the 661, the 8S661. Of course, you all probably recognize the type of dial escutcheon that goes with this radio. Now, this radio had a couple of bad tubes, so I tested all the tubes, and I've gotten some nice new old stock tubes for the radio, and we should be good to go once I get to that point. Now, I mentioned when we were looking at the cabinet that the speaker was a little bit damaged. It's not terrible. This is I love this. This is almost too much. It's funny to look at stuff like this. There's some Scotch tape over a couple of holes on the speaker, so that's no big deal. I'll do it properly. I like to use coffee filter and a little bit of Eileen's tacky glue, and then sometimes I'll touch that up in the end with a layer of thinned out speaker service cement, and the reason I do that is just for the color. Speaker service cement will also remain very flexible like the tacky glue. I've never seen it lift, and then it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. And, you know, the cable, the speaker wiring harness doesn't look too bad. I'll take a real close look at it, but I think it's going to be okay. I'll just clean everything up. Sometimes I just simply will put a coat of lacquer or enamel on this just to, you know, flat, not shiny, flat, just to kind of keep the fibers from splitting and stuff like that. But it all depends on the situation. I have already checked all of the transformers, and you know, I checked the oscillator coils, and you know, I checked all of that stuff to make sure I was good there. Checked the field coil in the speaker, and did all those measurements, because the last thing you want to do is go through a complete recapping of the radio, and do all the resistors and all the other stuff that goes along with the radio, and find out the darn radio doesn't work because you've got an IF transformer with an open coil. Boy, that with an open winding, boy, that makes you mad. So this one is all good. I shouldn't have any trouble. And I'll look at my records. I actually think I even fired this one up for a few minutes, and it was distorted if I remember right, but it played. So, you know, that's a good sign too. But I always keep pretty good records. I'll take a look at those records before I really dig in. Now let's take a look under the chassis. The only thing about this radio I don't like is I really don't like working on these Zenith small chassis from the early 40s and then the late 40s after the war. Mostly, you can see why. Take a look at that. I mean, that's crowded. You know, if you've ever worked on a nice GE chassis or an RCA, which is well organized and lots of open space, and other radios that are like that too, even the earlier Zeniths with the big gold chassis, this will make you crazy. And thankfully, this radio does not have push-button preset tuning. That makes these even worse. I have had some Zeniths with this chassis style with the push-button preset tuning, about pull your hair out trying to work on the thing. But this one, you know, it'll be a pain, and you know, it'll be tight, but I'll get through it. The thing about these early 40s radios, and you see it in some of the late 30s radios, let me get in as close as my camera will let me. But you'll see if you look real close, right up here is a good example. It's got the rotten, crumbling insulation syndrome that so many radios of that period got. Some of the wires in here are cloth covered. Some of them look even like replacements. And some of them look like they're still flexible. I don't get why that is. It seems like there are some colors that will still be flexible, and then other colors will be shot. But in any event, if there's any sign at all that the wire is bad or going to be bad, I yank it out of there and replace it. Originality is not important enough to me to burn someone's house down. And so we'll go ahead and replace every bad wire. That usually adds to the cost for the poor customer, but it's better than having a radio that's a fire hazard. And of course all the caps will come out of there, and all the dog bone resistors, and even the later, more modern carbon resistors. You know, some of them will be okay, but sometimes it's more pain in the butt to test them than it is just to replace them. And so, you know, the usual stuff. This is typical Zenith. Looks like a rat's nest, but darn it, they are some of the best performing radios out there. Of course, I'll replace the dial cord. And on this one, there is no idler dial, dial belt like there was on the 661. So this will be simpler that way. And so we'll get started on this thing, and I will keep you up to date on the progress. And that's all for now.